Welcome everybody to Door Tunes episode 83. We are closing in on that 100. Welcome everybody again to this week's episode, and I'm really delighted for this week's guest. I'm very honored to have them on the show. I guess I'll get you to introduce yourself.
My name's Peter McConnell. I've been writing music for games for 30 plus years, and I love what I do.
And we love what you do too, in fairness. You've done so many iconic games over the years. You've done Psychonauts, you've done Monkey Island, you've done Sly Cooper, you've done Star Wars. Where did it all begin for you?
Well, I guess the sort of smarty answer to that is by being born. I've always loved music, and I'm told I was singing before I could talk, so you take that for you can take that for what it's worth. But in college, I learned to play instruments in high school and studied music on my own a little bit. And in college, I had thought I was going to be a physicist, do something technical like that, and then had kind of conversion experience in electronics class, where I realized that really I was much more bummed that my guitar was sitting unused, unplayed for a week, than I was happy that I was doing all those physics problem sets. So I changed my mind and went on a long path. And I guess the long and the short of it is, after school, I took some time off, came back, graduated in music. After school, I got a job programming, so still had my technical side, for Lexicon, which makes black boxes that musicians play their instruments through. And I did that and played in bands for a while. And then I had this opportunity to join my friend Michael Land at LucasArts. And that job involved all this time. And it was like, I really want to do music. That's all I want to do. But how to do it, it's always a bit tricky. So I had this opportunity to come out west and work in do programming and composition for LucasArts, which I thought, wow, there could not possibly be a better job than that. I mean, someone's actually going to pay me to write music and come up with the system that we play music on. So I was very lucky that way, to have that opportunity. And that was that was about 30 then. That was is that right? Was I really already 30? Oh, yeah, I guess I was in 1990. Ooh, I'm dating myself.
I was 11.
So and I think when I first got interested in games, the reason I thought it was such a cool opportunity was in college. I went to Harvard, and sort of the Harvard MIT. There's kind of there's this game called Zork that was written by some guys at MIT, and kind of all the geeks in Boston, Cambridge area knew about Zork, and how many points had you gotten Zork and that sort of thing. And that was like my first and also the PC, that the personal PC came out right when I was graduating. Yes. So there was this kind of, games were this little boutique kind of niche that really only nerds knew about, like Zork, that kind of thing. And but they were cool. And so I was really into especially sort of story-driven games. And so when I had this opportunity to work at LucasArts, I saw my first graphic adventure. That would be in 1990 when I saw my first graphic adventure. I was like, wow, what is this? I mean, the little guys can actually walk around the screen and see. This is a long time ago.
Yeah.
And so I worked with my colleagues Michael Land and Clint Pajakian and Michael McMahon, who's a programmer for the system that we worked on, and for about a decade. And I learned a lot, and I scored,
A lot.
some games that you mentioned. Monkey Island was one of the composers on. That's really Michael's main gig, and Full Throttle and Grim Fandango and several Star Wars games like TIE Fighter and X-Wing and so on. And just was very lucky to work on some of these really great early titles. Grim probably being the one that really was most special for me, because it was my first opportunity to really work with some fantastic live musicians, and that just made, I just wanted to do nothing but that.
Yeah.
Once I was doing
I
so
totally.
so I left Lucas in 2000 and went out on my own and did a sort of a startup with Michael. That was a tech startup, and supported it by writing music for games, which is not the way people usually do things. And Sly Cooper and Sly 4. I mean, sorry, Sly 2 would have been, and the first Psychonauts game. That's when I did those, and just since then I've done a lot of games.
Yeah.
Lots of different publishers and developers, most of which you've mentioned. Yeah.
And what would be kind of, if you could choose one? I know it's difficult to, but like kind of the one that you remember most when you were recording, the kind of one that you really, really enjoyed doing like the most, and the one that you kind of sit back now and kind of go, love that, of all the games that you've kind of scored.
Never ask a guy to pick his favorite child.
It's like picking his favorite child.
I will say, generally speaking, it's always the one I'm working on.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I always love it because I always feel like I'm working. I always feel like I'm doing my best work. Like I hope I'm always learning, right? So that means whatever I'm doing now, hopefully I'm doing a better job than I was, yesterday. And my favorite game that I'm working on right now, my favorite game is the one I'm working on right now, which I can't tell you about.
Yeah. We love NDAs.
But obviously Grim Fandango's gotten a lot of love and respect over the years, which is, feels really good. And I think Tim, I'm going to speak for Tim Schafer. I think it has a special place in his heart too, and that's certainly one. But they're Psychonauts and Brutal Legend and Sly Cooper, and I mean they all have just things to me that I just think are wonderful. Hearthstone, which I continue to do, is just a wonderful scoring opportunity. It just a lot of creative freedom, and it's just a wonderful
thing to do.
Bit of work.
And do you think this is a new thought to me, actually, which I'm going to ask everybody else from now on? Do you think you'll ever stop composing?
Well, unfortunately, we stop at some point. But no, I don't think I will. I mean, I'd like to someday spend more time camping than I am composing. That's but I can't imagine not writing music. So in whatever form that might take. And
the only reason I ask is because every time I speak to someone who's a composer, you got to look at people like Austin Wintry, he never stops. He is like a machine, you know, and he's always got like loads of different projects on the go, and it just blows my mind how you guys can do things like that, and you can kind of go, okay, that's that game, and that's how that sounds, and that's that game, and that's how that sounds, and never the twain shall meet.
Yeah, Austin's a good friend and fantastic composer, and yes, and a very busy guy, right? Um, and I think I think we do stuff kind of because we have to. I mean, and it's not just because you have to pay the bills. It's because it's what you do. It's like you wake
Because
up
you
in the
love it.
morning and you make it. Yeah. So there's and in terms of keeping the one things separate from each other,
Mhm.
and in other words, like there's a Psychonauts should not sound like Sly Cooper
Mm.
or Hearth or Connectimals or um, uh, that's that's part of the that's really part of the fun that
Mhm.
each each project has its own world,
Mm.
um, and part of part of the sort of creative joy is creating that world and making it special for itself.
Yeah.
And of course, you have a style, right? Everybody has a style. Everybody has a bag of tricks or whatever
Mm.
that they use when they're working. But to me, I just love one of the things I really like is carving out a space and saying, okay, this is my garden, and I'm not stepping out of this garden.
And when you're composing for different games, do you approach them differently?
I have a pretty similar working style on all projects, uh, but and that working style is I try to work with melodies as soon as possible and as early as possible. I do a lot of like humming into my iPhone. I used to be humming into a handheld cassette recorder, and
You're not the
now it's
first
humming
person to
into
say that.
and and the challenge of that, of course, is it sounds like when you first come up with it and you're humming it into your iPhone, it sounds like Beethoven's Ninth. You're like, this is the best thing I've ever done. And then next day when you listen to it, you hear and you can't even tell what it was you were singing. And I've learned at least to snap my fingers so that I know where beat one is when I'm doing it. But it is really that seeing just being the raw melodies for me are really they're the first thing. Everything's built around that. Everything's built around the theme for me. I mean,
Mhm.
that's not the way all music works, but it is the way my music works. And so uh uh that that sort of humming the melody or writing it down on paper,
Mhm.
I occasionally do that too. And then coming back to it later and going, hey, that's what was I thinking? Or, oh, that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
And it takes a little perspective, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Mhm.
to really come up with a theme that works.
Mhm.
And so that's certainly the process I used on Grimm. That's the process I used in Psychonauts. Um, I do that with Hearthstone, which is
Mhm.
a very different
EP.
title. Uh, and in that case, what I'll do is I'll sit down and because it's very guitar based,
Mm.
uh, sit down and play my guitar and hum and record that into an iPhone and see if I like what I hear the next day or a few hours later or whatever.
And have you ever got
But
to a
yeah,
point? Sorry, have you ever got to
go
a
ahead.
point where you've created a theme and then you walk away from it the next day, you come back and you go, actually, that's awful. Scrap that and start again.
Yes. Usually it's a comparison. Usually it's like there'll
Yeah.
be this and that, and then I'll whatever scroll through them and play them and like, oh, that's totally threadbare, or that's
Mhm.
just whatever. But yeah, absolutely. And you know, one of the most important things about composing, I think, is decomposing, which is throwing stuff out. Like you get and this is especially applies, I think, to a later stage when I tend to get a little complicated, and so there's as I'm going through a piece, I'm constantly going back and throwing out the, cleaning up the dirt, throwing out the stuff that I don't, um, I just don't think is helping.
Hmm. And now that you said that when you do your music, do you ever, when you finish a project, obviously that's done and dusted, do you ever go back to it, like say a couple of years later, and listen to your old stuff and kind of go, not bad?
Yeah, a couple years later. Sometimes it depends. With a continuing project, there, if something's like a big behemoth, that took 5 years to write, say Psychonauts 2, right?
Yeah.
Uh, it's not. It's like you kind of have to get some distance after you're done. Although what I do really do enjoy playing the game with my kids and hearing it that way, right?
That's
But
awesome.
but to sit down and listen to it, which is what it's meant for. So I mean, um, but to sit down and listen to the music, that's it's not, it usually takes a little space for me to
Mhm.
get back to it, and then
Yeah.
yeah, and usually I will. Oh, gee, that's better than I thought it was.
It's just funny because I spoke to John Hillman recently. I emailed him and he was saying that he's listened only very recently to his soundtrack for That Dragon Cancer, and he said it's still quite difficult to listen to because of his connection with the family and the music itself. I think for me, it's one of my favorite soundtracks of all time. It's really, really beautiful.
Well, the sort of the emotional connection. I
Mm,
mean, when I listen to music, I'm listening to it as music, but a
mm,
particular song make intense experience I've had, and that's a little different.
yeah.
Or if I wrote if I wrote a piece and it was during some family fight or something like that,
Hmm.
oh geez, that's the piece I wrote when this was
Yeah,
happening
yeah.
or something. But
I'm quite,
uh,
I'm quite
but
emotional with
but
music as well.
those things, that's pretty that's a pretty subtle effect for me, honestly.
Yeah.
Uh, with it's much more powerful to say it, regarding, say, like music I listened to in college that was not mine.
Hmm.
But my music, I put so much work into it that even if there was some uh, and normally, actually, I'm kind of wandering all over the place here, but it's interesting, like, because it gets into a deep subject, which is, what is music, like, how does it affect you, why do you react to it,
Mm,
and a lot of um, a lot of the music, a lot of the memories for me that are beyond the music itself or the context, uh, uh, they are there. They're part of the music, and they're usually pretty happy ones.
yeah. Yeah.
Like there's a piece in Broken Age that um, uh, was written about a character, Merrick, who appears to be a wolf, right, in the
Hmm.
in the early part of the game, and we actually, at the time, we live in a sort of semi-rural area, and at the time, down the road from us, we had one of our neighbors actually had a real genuine wolf, like
Wow.
that, and
Cat.
the wolf's name Aku for ice cream. It's Inuit for ice cream, and it's a big white wolf, very imposing animal. Dude walked it with those ropes that you climb up to the
Yeah,
top of
yeah,
the
yeah.
gym on. That was basically this wolf's leash. Okay,
Wow.
it had a rope, like, uh, and a wolf is, you see pictures of them on TV, but uh, they're really they're so much bigger and more imposing than any other canine.
Yeah.
And so this wolf used to howl at night, and it had this beautiful, I hope I recorded it somewhere. It had the most beautiful howl, and kids and I would do it, so when I wrote this song, it actually had that wolf's howl in it, and my kids learned to sort of sing it, and we kind of played it together. So there are a lot of things for me that if I listen to the music, yeah, that it comes all back. Like if I were to listen to Broken Age again, all the stuff my family was doing then would come back in a really pretty awesome way.
Mm. And that's lovely. And I think that, that's really important that we all have that kind of connection with music in some way. I'm quite emotional when it comes to music. So there are particular tracks that I might play or that come on that trigger, an emotion within me. For example, one of my best friends, he was buried. He unfortunately passed away many years ago, and he was buried to a piece of music from Halo 2. And
Mm.
every time I hear it, it used to make me really upset because he's gone, and now it makes me smile because I'm remembering him from that.
Right,
So,
right. Well,
yeah,
that's the thing. Music, it touches us deeply, and the way it does so
mm,
evolves,
yeah,
over time, and
yeah, definitely.
you know,
Um, like for example, Jess Curry, she sent me the soundtrack for Everybody's Gone to the Rapture, and before release, about 6 weeks before, and then there were two
Mhm.
pieces on it that made me cry. And then I played the game, and there was two parts in that game that made me cry, and it was the bits with that music in it. Those pieces.
That is just a magnificent score.
Yeah,
She is really uh, quite an artist and a
yeah,
craftsperson. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. That score was my favorite and my most played album for 6 years straight.
For good reason.
Yes, definitely. Thinking about your music now, obviously, years ago it was different. Now you see the massive surge in vinyl sales and particularly video game music on vinyl. It's just become this massive behemoth. You know, I think it's amazing, but it's a really expensive hobby to have, so don't pick it up. What do you think about being able to see like your music out there like that?
Well, see, I grew up in the age of vinyl. I mean,
Yeah.
for me, music, and when CDs came along, I think a lot of us, who were like musicians, who like were like, oh great, I'm making a CD. I really wish I was making a record, but I'm making a CD. Because a record, you open it up, it's got, like you
It's
get some
just
Yes album. It's got this amazing airbrush art on the outside. You open it up, and you see there's all this care taken,
Mhm.
and the lyrics. I think the lyrics actually got worse. Um, uh, at, in general, lyrics got worse because on a CD after vinyl went away for a while, because on a CD you just lean, where's the lyrics? There they are, I suppose, and with the exception of maybe REM,
Mm.
they're not even worth trying to figure out anyway. But in the old days, you had the big record jacket that might have the lyrics on them, the lyrics inside. There are all the musician credits, and who
Mm.
is Bob Clearmountain anyway? He mixed this thing, right? And all that, and all that is a way of saying that, vinyl was something it was an artifact. It was something you could hold. It was something that was big, and I've got a whole bunch of it over there.
Yeah.
And it takes up space on your shelves, and every time you move from one student room to another, the biggest thing you're going to move is your massive collection of records, which you're carrying in these little crates everywhere. Why did you do that? Because the music was worth doing that for. The music, vinyl was a expression of the value of music in society, that people were willing to devote that space and effort and physical actual
Yeah.
um, you know, strain to have.
Mm.
And so, so how do I feel about vinyl coming back? Great. Wow, now I get to make records just like I wanted to when I was a kid. And and I can open them up and see the credits. Well, I know all the credits anyway, but it's still cool.
Yeah.
And it's somehow like it's kind of interesting that CDs are kind of dead,
Mm.
because there's nothing really a CD is going to do for you that a digital file somewhere on a disc can't.
Yeah.
And so, boy, do I have a lot of those I need to get rid of.
Oh yeah, I
But
did that many years ago.
and of course, CDs. Speaking as an audiophile, yes, digital music sounds better. If you have a really really great I mean, technically speaking, it sounds better. You get a broader dynamic range. You have broader frequency range. Um, but but especially for rock and roll, um, it was played, it was invented and played and recorded to be put on vinyl. And so
Mm.
when you're hearing, say, a Japanese half-speed master of Abbey Road, which I have, you're really hearing the music the way it was meant to be heard if you have a decent system. And that, while that is technically not as amazing sounding as the digital version you can get somewhere on an also played on a decent system, it's kind of hard to explain, but it it feels better
Yeah.
because you're hearing what was meant to be heard originally, and you're also going to, there's just something about the ritual of picking up a record, putting it on, starting
Mhm.
it takes effort, and
And
so
it was
whenever I play music, I was just gonna say, whenever I play music for my kids, uh I always play it on a vinyl, it's here, like, this is Jimi Hendrix. Here, check it out. Um, this is Don McLean. This is Joe Walsh. Anyway, and yeah, you're right. It's ridiculously expensive. I'm just glad I have all my old vinyl from 40 years ago,
honestly,
um,
and it,
because I would not be spending $25 a pop for
no, more in some
these
cases.
days.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
like the
more.
box sets and things.
That said, please buy my vinyl for $25 a pop. It's really awesome. Or please.
I have a big thing for color vinyl. I love it. I really love when I
Mm-hmm.
see something coming out in color vinyl. I'm like, have to have. So, yeah.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah,
have
that
one
used to be quite the. Go ahead.
one final question for you. Sticking in the last maybe 10 years, make it a little bit easier. Is there any particular game soundtrack that you've heard that isn't your own that you've sat back and thought,
Um, yes, Moss.
Jason Graves? Yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
yeah, Jason Graves. I think his work on Moss and Moss 2 is just
yeah,
stunning. I really like that score a lot. And there's
yeah.
so many good scores out there. I mean,
Oh, yeah,
that
absolutely.
you know, it's just and really wonderful composers and doing cool stuff, and um, Austin's work is always something I want to hear, and Jason Hayes, I'm another big fan of him, and
Mhm.
there's and anyway, there there's lots of great stuff out there, and that's one that recently
Yeah.
really got my attention.
And Quill from Moss is just absolutely adorable.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, definitely buy your albums on vinyl, $25 a pop.
Yes, please.
I just wanted to say a massive thank you for being a part of the show. It's been a real honor. And hopefully
It's
we
my
can hear
great.
something soon, new soon.
Yeah, well, there's always something. Yeah. Are you going to be at GDC by any chance?
I'm not. I'm not. I will. I'd love to go at some point. Definitely. You know. I
It's easy
think.
for me.
Yeah. How far is it for you? Because you're in California, is that correct?
Yeah, it's an hour drive, and I'm just north
Oh
of San
wow.
Francisco, so
Okay.
it's
Oh, that's
it's
cool.
although this will be the first year I've gone actually for in a while just because of COVID.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
Is it,
that's pretty much stopped everything, hasn't it?
yeah,
It was
it's nice
what?
to be back and
Yeah, definitely. But it's made everything more expensive now. Like I was looking at going away with my best friend later on this year, and the same holiday we went on in 2019 is triple the price. For the same
yeah.
amount of days, for the same place, it is triple the price. I liked it, not that much. I paid
That's
less to
hard.
go to India and back.
Jeez. Yeah, well, it's yeah, we're all getting hit by that, that's for sure.
Yeah. But on the flip side, as I mentioned, I've just come back from Dublin. Um, the flight cost me £34.47. And then if I was to get, I got a lift, but if I was to get a taxi from my house to the airport, it was £35. I
Right,
I
yeah.
paid more in a taxi than I would my return flights. It's crazy.
Yeah, plane fares are always really a strange thing. Yeah. It's
Definitely. But yes, thank you ever so much for being part of the show. It's been a real honor speaking with you, and best of luck with whatever's coming out in the future. I'm sure we'll hear about that soon enough.
my pleasure. And yeah, keep your ears open, and I know I will. So great talk.
Thank you.